And welcome back to the channel and to another video. So today's video is going to be my thoughts on the new patch for Gwent the Witcher card game 8.2. And it's been a while since I've posted on this channel. I've been having this sort of internal conflict within me as to like where I want to go as a content creator. And I'm just going to share this with you because it's going to be sort of a spoiler alert to what you are going to have to expect in this channel going forward. I think for me, I'm a person that doesn't like to stay committed to one game, at least when it comes to content creating. What I want to stay consistent on is my style of editing. That's what I want to mainly focus on. And looking back at the old videos I made regarding Gwent, it's been very, in terms of like the effort I put in, I'd say like I don't think I put as much effort as I initially wanted to when I visualized myself making this channel. So that's why I'm going to venture off into other CCGs. So instead of like being strictly Gwent, I'm going to mainly focus on like CCGs in general. Maybe talking about some game design aspects of certain card games, or like, the usual deck guides. You still see deck guides, of course. But I just took this month off because Gwent took a month into not having a patch. So, I don't blame them. I don't blame the developing team. Actually, you know what? Before I get started, hold on. Let's play some music here, actually. Go on. Hit the music. Okay, that feels more like it. So, so what I want to stay consistent on is my style of editing, and I want to be able to share that with you guys, which is why I think, depending on what kind of content I make, I think my editing style might be more prominent on some of them over others. And the reason why I'm going to start with the patch is because I don't want to start right away with a deck guide, because finally after 2 months, a patch balance has coming out tomorrow. Based on when this is recorded, it'll probably be out on the day of the patch. The reason why it's so late for me is because I live in the West Coast and I'm at work. So like, I'd love to record this during the day, but I can't. I have to record it during night now. So I'm going back to those nightly recordings and upload. Well, uploads will still happen in the morning, but recordings will be happening at night. Anyway, to be perfectly honest, I'm just happy that the development team actually went ahead and did a relatively big patch. Whether it'll be meta changing or not, I can't say yet, because obviously it's hard to visualize how the meta will change until you actually see people start playing it, because a lot of what shapes the meta is the people that play the game. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, you haven't streamed in a while, you haven't uploaded a video in forever. Why on earth are you doing this? Why should we believe you? Well, it's because it's a 2-month meta that I am able to say some thoughts. It's because I played the entire first month. I streamed almost every single day during the first month of this patch. And then when I found out that the second one wasn't getting, or the second month, it was still going to stay the same, I thought I can take a break and the deck's going to stay exactly the same. Thoughts aren't going to change. So yeah, whether I go back to streaming or not is going to be up for question, because as you guys saw in the intro, I was holding a book. This holds pretty much every single idea I've had, or that I have, for this channel and some other projects. So, I am committing time to other things. Like I said, I'm also wanting to focus on establishing an editing style, and you guys will see that in this video and the upcoming videos you'll see in the channel. So, don't subscribe yet, and I'm gonna say that because, I don't know if this is gonna be the last video I post this month and not post again until next month. No, I'm kidding. You should subscribe anyway. Yeah, so we are going to go ahead and talk about not all of the changes, because some of them are gonna get quite redundant. I'm gonna try and package as many as possible into like one thought, because to be perfectly honest, like a lot of them got changed in a trendy, well, not a trendy, but there's a pattern to some of the changes. So if you've seen the patch, which I'm expecting that you have already, you'll know what I'm talking about. But other than that, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts on some of sort of the bigger changes, the ones that were more on demand, like by the community and such. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So I am going to start with one mechanic, and I'm going to be scrolling up and down a lot just because, every faction kind of got affected. Well, not almost every faction got affected. No, every faction got affected with this mechanic. Of course, we're talking about lock. So As we noticed from them, they are starting to even out the provision and power, like the provision power ratio to about 1. So like, for example, the Regere here is a 1-for-1 ratio, so 6-for-6. That's what I mean when I say 1-for-1 ratio. We're looking at Ox that has also become 6-for-6 from Nilfgaard. The ones that don't become 6-for-6 is because they have secondary abilities. So when you look at Moren, we know that Moren on, I believe it's the range row, allows you to damage an enemy unit by 2, or it could be the complete opposite, I can't remember. But yeah, like, for example, Margarita as well from the Northern Realms. No, never mind. Margarita is Zeal Order. She doesn't have really a secondary ability. But if I can't remember anything, then maybe I'm just thinking about Moren to be perfect. Oh, Jenge Fret. Yeah, Jenge, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. It's not a 6-for-6 because it requires a Bloodthirst 1, so it is a tiny bit set up. But I mean, a 7 power for 6 provision is not bad. Not to mention, Skellige doesn't have a lot in the tank when it comes to being able to lock your opponent units. You know, of course, compared to something like Nilfgaard, of course, where Nilfgaard loves having a lock mechanic based deck, and it'll still work, even though obviously it's not a meta deck. So yeah, that's sort of the pattern most of us pretty much saw. Well, all of us should have seen. I can't even speak English. When it comes to changing the lock, obviously it means that the developing team seems to want lock to be more of a prominent mechanic throughout the factions, not just with Nilfgaard, of course. So I mean, the Regere was a card I once used in like a fruits deck for monsters that lacked a bit of tech that I wanted to include. So the Regere was perfect, and even at 5 power, it was still able to proc some thrives. Now the Regere can even proc it can proc Katakhan, which is actually pretty nice. We will get to Katakhan later, so don't worry. Katakhan's obviously on the list because as a monsters player, I'm gonna cover if not all of the monsters like changes. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the locks. So I'm kind of happy with that in a sense. Because, you know, I always like a little bit of tech, but, you know, not like super crazy. Like, for example, Irden's a pretty crazy tech because you either get super high value with him or you get 2 points. Like, it's literally one or the other with Irden. But like something like this where the ratio of power provision is like more 1-to-1, but they have like sort of that small ability that can potentially deny a lot of value. Like, for example, like if you lock an Anna Stranger, then, you know, you could possibly deny a lot of value from that. So, you know, it all depends on who you hit it with. Next I have on the list here are the bombs. So Dancing Star got nerfed 5-4, Dimeridium Bomb, it's damage 4, give it Veil. I don't know why they'd want to give it Veil. I think that's what Dimeridium Bomb did, if I can recall from the clip. From the VOD, sorry. But yeah, so it is now damage 4. Red Haze has now gone from 5-4. In my opinion, Red Haze is gonna get quite a bit of love because you're damaging a unit. You're damaging a unit by the power of an adjacent unit's power. I can't remember if it's to the right or to the left. But that can potentially be good. It's a card that you're not going to expect people to play, so you don't really try to play around a Red Haze. But after seeing this, I don't know, you could potentially see it in Maddock deck. Man, I really hope I'm getting this right, because otherwise that'd be pretty embarrassing. I'm pretty sure, is Red Haze a bomb? I don't think it's a bomb. Let me fact check. Give me a second. So I just fact checked it, and Red Haze is indeed a bomb. So yeah, so everything I said about that is valid. So what this tells me is it seems that Maddock is in the future for the dev team in terms of where they want to see Gwent go in terms of gameplay. So that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. You know, I mean, that's just sort of what we're seeing here because of like the bomb boosts and stuff. Obviously Northern Wind didn't get buffed, and those other bombs that are normally used is because they're normally used. So it seems that they're giving more love to cards that didn't get as much love when Maddock was played. Well, when Maddock was introduced, I should say. He's still being played now. So that will do it for the bombs. The next one is Regis, and this, in my opinion, is I feel very indifferent about this. Like, this does nothing to make me want to play Regis again, because it still has initiative, which honestly killed Regis 100%. So giving it 3 power, you could have made this thing 4 or even 5 power, and I still wouldn't play it. Because, like, I can get 5 power from anywhere else, and, like, your opponent literally has to be, I wouldn't say gullible or, like, someone who just doesn't, you know, pay attention, because at that point that's the only way you're gonna see it, but it's because people are gonna be like, oh, this is such an unimportant or an indifferent feeling for me for the Regis change, that you might actually see the occasional Regis in every like 100 games, and you'll lose to it because you weren't paying attention. Like you'll see, oh my row, I have a 1 power card and a 2 and a 3. It doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna play Regis, and then boom, Regis comes up and you're screwed. But like again, that's gonna be 1 in every. Actually, heck, it's gonna be 1 in every 1,000 games. Holy crap! This does nothing for me, so nothing really different. Same with Scorch. I mean, that whole initiative thing's just tough, cause like you have other cards that do like tall removal. Like for example, Curse of Corruption. It's literally Scorch without the initiative, like without its original ability, I should say. Like, it doesn't really do much. And Curse of Corruption's cheaper, more consistent, more reliable, of course. You got Heat Wave. Heat Wave doesn't care what the power is, of course, but again, it's still cheaper than Scorch, and not to mention it can also remove artifacts. So, I mean, it's getting there, like, it's slowly creeping down, but again, the initiative just sort of kills it. The next one I'm going to cover is Yennefer Conjurer, and it's because Yennefer Conjurer was a card I played a lot of in the beta, and she was a lot of fun. I personally did enjoy her being able to just zap so many units on the board, and now you can do that in the first chance you get. So I'm kind of happy that this happened. This may make Yennefer Conjurer actually playable again, because you can get off that. Now, of course, if you're playing against monsters and you have like that one super tall unit that Conjurer's immediately gonna block, then sure. But if you're taking on units that have power that's relatively close to each other, so like a good example is like Northern Realms or Nilfgaard, cards that have factions that have cards that don't tend to go tall. So Conjurer's gonna find some value, more value there than it would take on like a monsters matchup. But I'm kind of happy that this happened. This will make me want to play Yennefer Conjurer again. So it's like, you know, you put down a 5 power unit, you'll at least get off 1 zap turn before it gets killed. You know, because like in its previous version without the Zeal, you know, you're gonna slam it on and it's gonna get insta outed, and it's like there's no point. So I'm kind of happy with this change. Xavier Lemons, it's kind of turned it to an engine for banishing cards. This could be potential synergy with Viper. You know, if people try to use Viper the wholesome way, but you know, I doubt it unless, you know, you're memeing it up. But this isn't so bad. It is a 6/6, I believe. Yeah, I believe it's a 6/6 if I'm correct. Yes, it's a 6/6. So I mean, you're still getting the 1-to-1 ratio. Not to mention it is a cycling ability. Now again, you know, we like to see these control decks as like, oh my god, they're like the bane of the game. They should not exist. But like, you know, there's only so many control cards, so like they have to decide which cards they want to keep versus which cards they want to remove. Chances are Xavier Lemons is going to be one of those cards that they're probably not going to care about, you know, unless of course they're like, you know, Skellige, which wants warriors in the graveyard for the Bran, or even like the is it the War of Clans, or even the Freya's Blessing, or potentially monsters if they're playing consumers like Ghoul and Ozzy, of course. But like the monsters one, you won't see as often as Skellige. So, you know, this could be used more proactively, I guess, like I said, with Viper, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, apart from that, you know, I don't know how it's gonna see, but, you know, I appreciate the change, because Xavier Lemons was barely being played. Next, we have monsters, and I'm gonna go through almost every single one of these. There are a couple that I'm not gonna go through. For example, Harpy. I mean, yeah, it got more powerful. It's pretty nice and appreciated. You can potentially see some Harpy eggs in a typical consume deck. Wild Hunt Hound, 4 provisions, that's also pretty nice. I actually think it should have been 4 provisions in the patch before, but I'm happy they did this. But now moving on. So, Overwhelming Hunger Leader with only 2 charges. That is a big change. It's a big change because it's not that it kills the deck that relies on it that's not V, but it kind of actually does. I think I might have contradicted myself there, but yeah, like your traditional Haunt scenario Overwhelming Hunger deck that doesn't use V has now been kind of killed, so you will need just that extra consume if you need it, of course. Now of course usually that wouldn't be a problem because monsters have a lot of units that can consume, so, and some of those that can consume more than once. But the problem is, because this meta was very tall removal heavy, control heavy, even then, like, they weren't still that powerful. So removing that extra charge actually makes the tall removal a bit more punishing, so you want to be careful about which card consumes what. and now you kind of have to protect your cards that can consume a little bit more. But you know, it did. The Ekamara did get boosted from 2 to 3. So, I mean, that's 3 extra points from getting rid of that third charge. Is it a good compensation? I don't think so. Not in the sense of, you know, having to protect your consume units more, but it is what it is. It does have 15 provisions still, so I guess they tried to compensate it as much as they could. And with the Ekamara boosts and the 15 provisions, I guess in a way they sort of did that, but like the overall composition of the deck is going to be slightly tweaked. It's definitely going to be slightly tweaked. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room for I'd say, like, I mean, depends on who you ask, but this is one of the 2 biggest elephants in the room for this video. We have V, or Vi, or however the heck you freaking pronounce this thing. It went from 8 to 7, I want to say, and from 12 to 14. Like I said, I played the month before. I didn't play this past month. So this change, in my opinion, it does... I wouldn't say it does nothing. Like, you'll definitely have to... But now, honestly, like, what this could do is, like, you cut Willem off and, like, add in a 4 provision card. Like, okay, cool, that's the change, and it'll essentially be the same. And if you're playing it with Overwhelming Hunger, I mean, you technically have to only remove 1 provision. Either way, you're still cutting probably Willem, even though you don't have to. But yeah, so you decrease the power of V by amount. I wouldn't say it's by a substantial amount. It was mentioned that, like, you know, the amount of times that you play V, you lose 7 to 8 power, essentially equals the amount of times you use to consume it, or to trigger its ability, I should say. But the problem is that power decrease, not it in the grand scheme of things, that's very tiny. It's actually a very tiny like cutoff in power, because whenever you play a V deck that you cannot like control, or even like, yeah, you can't even control or like keep in tempo pace of, you're gonna get beaten by dubs by 20 points at least. And if you decrease it by 7 or 8, you're still being beaten by double digits. Like, it's still a runaway victory unless you really control the V decks very well. So I don't know how to feel about that change in terms of the power changes. Like, you'll see games where you're like, oh, I lost by 5 against a V deck. Yes, it's getting better. I mean, sure, but like, come on. It doesn't, like, in terms of the overall idea of how V is gonna play, it ain't gonna change. V is still gonna be played the same. Like, I'm gonna guess that people are gonna try and experiment to see what the ceiling of V is gonna be now that it got this nerf. Don't get me wrong, it is a substantially big nerf for V, so, you know, you have to tweak some things around, but when we're looking at the ceiling in the grand scheme of things, that not just round by round by round, but all 3 together, then, you know, I don't know if it's gonna be as big as what maybe the developers thought it was gonna be. I don't know, just a thought, just a thought. We got Rot Fiend 4 to 5. I mean, sure, 5 to 5 that can damage the highest unit by 4 when it dies. That's pretty cool. Katsukan. Now, Katsukan is the next card I want to sort of go over. This one's pretty good, in a sense, because it can now be procced by like the Alpha Werewolf. So you can now play Katsukan first before the Alpha Werewolf. Not to mention the Ekamara got boosted by 3, so it got those 2 extra points from its Deploy and Death Wish ability. So I can see why they nerfed it. 6 would have made it definitely too powerful. Either that or you boost the Katakan's provisions up to 10, which I think would potentially kill it. So I'm kind of happy that they did the 5 power on it. It is now gonna become... It is now vulnerable, however, to the 5 damage club. We're talking Alzur's Thunder, we're talking Nature's Rebuke, we're talking Assassination, or what's the name of that card? Bloody... I've coded weapons, but like no one's gonna play Katsukan because you don't want to give you an extra copy of it, of course. But unfortunately, it can now be removed by mere bronze cards. But again, because of that Death Wish of summoning another Ekamara, then you know that is some compensation. Next we have Fuka. Fuka now thrives too. I don't know how I feel about this. Again, it's hard to say because, you know, we've never had it. I think I mentioned it in a random stream where, what if Fuka thrives too instead, you know? But anyway, like that was like a month ago, so. No armor, no longer has Veil, which means Fuka can now be poisoned, it can now be locked, it can now be, you know, dealt with. But the Thrive 2, I don't know. I mean, Fuka gets bigger in a shorter amount of time, so I guess it makes it a little bit stronger. Like, you don't have to play Fuka as early as like other cards. Especially if you're climbing it by 1. So for example, if you play Fuka, you don't need to play a 5-point unit yet. Then again, it depends on your sequencing, right? So I don't know how to feel about this. This one's still iffy for me. I have to play around with it to get like a full thoughts process of it. Right now I'm just trying to think about initial thoughts. Eater or Eider, 7 provisions. Sure, I've never really played with an Eider deck yet, so I might try that this upcoming patch. Decode actually has a deck that we might actually try out and record on stream. Sorry, not on stream. This is gonna go to YouTube. I'm gonna focus more on YouTube now. Streaming, not so much, but we'll see. Going to Skellige, here comes the next big elephant in the room. We have Lippy. Yeah. Again, this is the exact same thoughts as I had with V. The overall vision of how this card's gonna work in the deck is gonna stay exactly the same. Like, the worst you're gonna do is cut, I don't know, you could potentially cut Morgvarg, you could cut COC, you could cut, like, totems, whatever, I forgot the name of that card, the totem pole card, the 10 provision with the 2 wolves, but like, yeah, I mean, this card's still gonna see the play, so this is another one of those indifferent changes for me. Like, it won't really kill it, because what made Lippy so powerful is the fact that you can just spam, like, Ceres in 2 rounds, and that's super high tempo. That's what made Lippy so insanely powerful. Everything else around Lippy is just a support. Ceres is where the true threat came in when Lippy was made like how it was. The nerf to Roach and Knickers just amplified it by like, it's not as extreme as like, you know, what people thought it was. Like, Lippy pretty much kind of remained the same before the expansion came out. It just got amplified when Roach and Knickers got buffed. Now that Lippy got nerfed by 1 provision, I don't see much changes coming from it. So that's why I'm saying I feel indifferent about this change. Heron Kaduk, order now heals by 2. Like, yeah, you're not gonna get the full benefits of it from, it's not gonna be increased by 4 instead of increased by 6 in terms of power. But like, leaving damage units behind is not so bad if you're trying to play a more self-damage kind of archetype. Like, my self-damage, well, it's not mine, it's actually, I got it from KD, so I'm not gonna steal his thunder. But when I saw KD play the self-damage Witchers, then, you know, we'll see 2 Bear Witchers that won't get healed all the way, which means that the Quartermaster, the Bear Witcher Mentor could get more powerful. This was mentioned by, in the video. So, you know, yeah, there's a potential idea I could try out with. But, yeah. My guess is, I don't know what plan CDPR has for Lippy, but they're keeping it for a reason. They're not changing the way it works. Despite the fact that people want a Lippy rework or a Lippy kill. It's one of the 2. And then the other half is going to be like, keep Lippy. Lippy's good. It climbs me all the way up to pro or the top 500. Sure. Right? So, you know, it's going to be polarizing in the terms of the community and the community reaction. That's going to be polarizing. Because you either really like Lippy or you really hate it. So, and those who really like it are in the minority in terms of expression, because let's say all of Reddit pretty much just hates Lippy, at least expressively. Somebody tries to say I love Lippy on a Reddit post, they're gonna be condemned. Like, it is just what it is. We got Brockvar Hunter. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is a slight, like, it strangely enough can be seen as a bit of a buff on the Brockvar Hunter. Sure, you play against scoia'tael that does interactive movement, then your Brockvar Hunter screwed, but like, you know, it kind of forces you to play Brockvar Hunter in the back row, which means you can't accidentally overfill your front row by the time Ceres comes back in. So, I mean, I don't know, in some strange way that could be seen as a buff, because your opponent's you're kind of forcing to put your Brockvar Hunter in the back row. Again, if it gets moved, then that's what your opponent did. But like, it kind of takes away the bonehead move potentially of over swarming your front row with the Brockvar Hunter. So unfortunately, you're forced to put it in the back row. Heim at 7 provision instead of 8. I'm still experimenting with Heim, and I will find some sort of deck that plays with it and makes it okay. Like, it's never gonna be a competitive card, but hey, who knows? And Olaf, of course, goes up to 10, so Olaf is now a 10-10 big boy. But I mean, I could potentially try and play it out. Next we have Northern Realms. Nothing big here. I mean, Archgriffin is a card that I still want to play around. The only reason why Archgriffin didn't do well at all is because we were playing in a meta that was very control heavy, very tech heavy, very removal heavy, so Archgriffin does nothing. I don't think Archgriffin will see much more play. I mean, of course, with Pincer Maneuver being boosted up to 60 provisions, you can be a bit more flexible now with the Archgriffin meme card, but it's still going to be a meme deck. And I appreciate that the developing team expresses their sort of belief in that Archgriffin will become some sort of viable card, or at least a card that people will want to play. And trust me when I say I'm on the boat, I'm on the same boat with them. Like, I have faith in the Archgriffin one day hopefully becoming a card that can be played in some sort of deck that's not a meme, but you know, I like it. And I wonder if someone's trying to be funny with the whole 6 power 9 provision, or you know, 6/9. Haha, funny. Margarita, kind of already went through it. Reinforced Trebuchet, kind of like the old Reinforced Trebuchet, but now it's conditional old Reinforced Trebuchet with crew, of course. So, like, for example, you can just play a bunch of soldiers with, you know, your 4 provision engine soldiers, like, for example, Trident Infantry, Temerian Drummer, etc., all those soldier cards. And, of course, you have the Karak Frigate, which can spawn all of those scout soldiers. I don't remember what those tokens are called. But, like, yeah, so you just slam a Reinforced Trebuchet in between that pile, and it can now start damaging random enemies, which is pretty nice. You could, again, Siege could be somewhat more playable now that Reinforced Trebuchet now has more leeway on who to hit, but again, you have to fulfill that crew condition for it to work. So that's not so bad. It'll make me want to experiment again with Siege at some point. Scoia'tael, Novigradian Justice. Now it requires some setup for sure. The spawning, despite the way it's worded, you know, because it says to play a card first, but then it says if you already, so which means you have to have it before the ability is activated. But they do sort of expand it so that now you can play a Crown Splitter instead of just a Dwarf. But even then, I think the most notable Dwarf I've seen in... Sorry, a Crown Splitter I've seen in Syndicate is a Dwarf. And those are like, for example, Bare Knuckle Brawler, which you normally see in a Horse and Senior sort of... Is that a Gord deck? I can't remember. I think it is. But yeah, like the one that uses Horse and Senior for those lackeys and stuff. Like I've seen a couple Bare Knuckle Brawlers there, like that get spawned with Portal. But if you're gonna play Novigradian Justice with it, then you're not gonna want to play Portal unless you have another 4 provision card that you want to get out with Portal instead of Novigradian Justice. So yeah, this one now requires a bit of setup. Of course, it's no longer an auto include. This one is gonna lean towards more a Dwarven style deck for scoia'tael for sure, and for Syndicate, I'm not sure. I'll have to experiment more with that. And that's something I want to get back into more doing, is sort of just straight up experimenting. Whether or not I'll stream it is optional, but like, you know, it'll depend on the mood, I guess, for sure. Because like I said, streaming was never part of the comfort zone for me. So I've always preferred recording videos, honestly, so that's just my style. Call to Harmony leader has now 16 provisions, Dana has 7 powers, so this is actually a pretty decent buff to Harmony. Of course, what killed Harmony in the very first place was the removal of Francesca, aka Mystic Echo, so that's the only reason why Harmony got killed in the first place. Everything else kind of stayed the same. Hopefully this changes it a little bit. I doubt it'll do too much of a change, but hey. Let's start to experiment. Cat Witcher Adrenaline 3. This is another thing that I sort of mentioned during a stream in front of like 5 people, where I was like, I think Cat Witcher's Adrenaline is way too high. I think it has to be lower, because like that damage 2 is actually really powerful for a 5 provision card, no doubt, no less. So the fact that they lowered the Adrenaline makes me happy. But, you know, we'll see. I think it'll still see play regardless, because it's still an engine anyway, and the power hasn't changed, and the provisions hasn't changed, so. But I do like that change to the Adrenaline. It won't make it, it'll literally decrease the potential ceiling by 1. I think that's all it does. Next we have Kiaran. Again, it's part of the lock sort of thoughts I had in the very beginning of the video, so we're gonna move on. Barclay Else, a small buff to the dwarves, which is pretty cool. You'll love to see it. 6 provisions. Whether or not it'll make dwarves more playable, I doubt it. I doubt a minimal change to one card such as Barclay Else. I don't think it'll do too much of a change, but we'll see. Eorvith and Eorvith's Gambit. I mean, I don't see Trap still being played despite the buffs to these 2 cards. I really don't see it. It doesn't hurt to give it a shot, but in terms of like their potential use in competitive, I don't think it makes a difference. And I think that's pretty much it in the big changes there. Like, you can read the rest. We got Nilfgaard, Imprisonment Leader. I did have that small phase where I wanted to try Imprisonment with J-Hugs when I saw J-Hugs playing it. So, you know, 16 provisions, that's pretty cool. Alba Pikeman can now damage a random enemy with Bonded, so that's actually pretty cool. It'll make Alba Pikeman... You'll want to play Alba Pikeman now both on one round as opposed to split one on each, which is pretty nice. Experimental Remedy on 5 provisions is pretty... Actually, this is strong, because you play Experimental Remedy with, like, combination with Assimilate engines, then you're gonna get a lot of boosts from that. So this is a bigger buff than I think what the CDPR team thought it might have been. This is a big buff. Like, come on. And Viper with the 8 provisions. Okay, you want to be a bit more flexible with including Viper into decks. That's fair. Syndicate's got, like, it doesn't look like a lot here, but these are very significant changes. Like, Madame Louisa's Tribute 3 gain Zeal kind of makes it that old Louisa kind of has returned. And it compensate... No, wait. Actually, I think Savola's Tribute 2. So it doesn't necessarily compensate all the way. But actually that doesn't matter, because with Louisa, your next tribute is actually free. I forgot about that. But yeah, the old Louisa is essentially back with a condition, of course, with Tribute 3 gain Zeal. In some cases, that could be seen as a good thing, because you had Savola that profited too. After activated from, like, the old version of Louisa, where it just straight up gave a free tribute next in the round. But that could lead in some cases where it's like those 2 coins could often go, you know, undetected, because you're already at 9 coins and you're like, oh, it's a free Savola. Like, I'm gonna give up 2 coins for a free 17-point Savola. So they just straight up did it and pretty much ignored those 2 coins that they would have gotten for the profit, of course. Now, if you're like a competitive pro level, high level player, you're gonna want to make sure every point counts. So, you know, you're obviously not going to make that mistake, but because of how much power these 2 had together, it didn't matter in most cases. Now that it has Tribute 3, whether you like it or not, you're gonna get those 2 coins from Savola, which again, sort of lowers the, like, paying attention to detail kind of thing, where you're gonna get those 2 coins regardless, because you previously paid 3 to get Louisa off, if any of that makes sense. Kurt, 6 for 6 now. Place a bounty or purify unit. Bounty's gonna become a bit more powerful now because of this. Kurt got cheaper, which is pretty cool. It got a bit more powerful. Not to mention it can also be used to purify as well, even though you have a Dalbertus for that. But if you don't think you need that much purification, then 1 could potentially be enough. Collusion's got down to 10. Again, that's one of those cards where it's hard to come up with an opinion for until you actually experiment with it, so I'm not gonna say too much. Fallen Rayla, same problem, or same thing. Field Experiment, same thing. And Salamandra Abomination, kind of the same thing. So again, Syndicate's one of the... Oh, Salamandra Mage. That one's one of the bigger affected cards, I think, because it's now become a pretty decent engine. So, you know, it's in some ways it's become a bit of a coin generator, of course, if you put it in a tribute deck. So again, it's still one of those cards where you have to experiment it to get your full thoughts on it. These are just my initial thoughts, so, you know, that's why it doesn't sound as detailed. So yeah, that's gonna be everything. I honestly thought this video was gonna be shorter than what it actually ended up being. Well, I'm gonna make a couple cuts, so we'll see. But yeah, that's gonna do it for my initial thoughts for 8.2 for Gwent. Let me know what you guys think of it, what cards you guys think is gonna get big play, or which cards you guys think might not see play at all. If you think anything's gonna change, definitely let me know in the comment section below. And just tune back into the channel just to see what kind of content we're going to be coming up with. Like I said, I want to focus more on the video editing aspect of my videos as opposed to just like the deck guides and all that stuff, because, you know, the rest of the vision I had when I first wanted to start doing YouTube was to work on my editing skills. And now that I have a job, I can now pay for video editing software that has certain features that I want to work with. So that's going to be that. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new and you're interested in these kinds of contents. And other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.